All right, welcome everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. We're very excited to have you here in this webinar titled A Deep Dive into Katalon's Annual State of Quality Report 2023. We have with us today Dr. Vu Nguyen, Director of Software Scientific Research here at Katalon. We also have Saram Vidam, Chief Marketing Officer at Cigniti Technologies, Vishy Ramakrishnan, Senior Manager Quality Engineering at Deloitte, Rajesh Sarangapani, Senior Vice President and Head of Innovation at Cigniti, and also Jason Lee, Partner Quality Engineering at Deloitte. Thank you everyone for being here with us today. We appreciate your time. Before we begin, there are a couple of housekeeping items that I would like to run by the audience. First, this webinar will be recorded and the recording will be shared with you via our channels later this week. So if by any chance the scheduling gets in the way and you need to drop off, you're more than welcome to do so. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you will be able to catch up where you left off later with the recording. Also, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A button that you will see at the Zoom interface that you're using to watch this webinar. So please go ahead and put your question in there. Do not wait until the end. Even though we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, please go ahead and put all your questions in there so we can start addressing them. Also, we encourage you to keep the conversation going on our chat window. If there is any feedback or anything that you want to communicate to any of the panelists or other members of the audience, you are more than welcome to do so. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So the agenda for today is we're going to talk about what are the key findings of the 2023 State of Quality Report. In addition to that, we're going to have a fireside chat where we're going to dive deep into more of these findings in relation to quality assurance, best practices and techniques, test automation, artificial intelligence for software testing, and how is that impacting the industry these days, challenges and opportunity in QA, and also, last but not least, we have our partners from Deloitte and Cigniti are going to show us a couple of case studies on how all this data that we're about to show you and all these insights relate to real life use cases. And also at the end, as I mentioned, we will have the Q&A and then it will be time to wrap it up. All right, so with that being said, I am going to go ahead and pass the mic to Dr. Vu Nguyen, who is going to walk us through an overview of how this report was created, the demographics, and the techniques that were used to capture all this data. So, Dr. Vu, the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucio. Hello, everyone. Since 2018, Katalon has been releasing the State of Quality Report annually, providing essential insights into the current state of software quality. This report has become an important resource for the QA community, offering the actionable recommendations and best practices to deliver high-quality software products. With the feedback from the thousands of professionals, the report is useful for readers to stay up to date on the latest trends and challenges in quality engineering. This year edition of the quality report was produced in partnership with Cigniti and Deloitte. The report was released on the analysis of the survey conducted late last year. By working together with these industry leaders, we were able to gather key insights in software professionals to share with the QA community. In this webinar, we will present key findings from the report and offer recommendations to tackle challenges faced by professionals in the community. Next, please. The questionnaire was distributed online via various channels, and it consists of 29 questions covering a number of topics, including QA techniques, practices, test automation, AI for test automation. Over 3,000 respondents with varying roles in software projects completed the survey. Automation QA engineers, manual QA engineers are the top two largest groups of respondents. The survey also included respondents from other roles like project manager and software engineer. The respondents come from various domains, including information technology, financial services, insurance, and healthcare. It is important to note that many in the IT sector were involved in the software development for other sectors. Next, please. And here's the key insights and findings from the report. As you can see here, in the survey, the respondents were asked to rate the most crucial objective of their projects. And the results show that the majority of them identified achieving a balance between speed, quality, and cost as a top priority. They also rated quality over speed of delivery, cost, and surprisingly, only 7% of respondents rated cost as a significant objective. With regard to quality satisfaction, we found that 33% of respondents from QA teams reported being highly satisfied with software quality upon delivery. Furthermore, we have found that the agile teams express even higher levels of satisfaction than those using waterfall model or other process methodologies. Software teams employ a number of QA techniques. Our survey revealed that about 2/3 of respondents employ test automation, while 37% of them practice code review. Most of them apply test automation for unit testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. We also found that test automation and code review are widely recognized as the most effective QA techniques. Next, please. It is a fact that automation can provide a high return on investments. Similar to the report we reported last year, this report continues to show that the test automation can generate a favorable return on investments, even within the first year of adoption of test automation. Moreover, the report indicates the return on investment increases when the team have more experience with automation. Almost all of the respondents reported an ROI of 20% or more after adopting automation for 5 years or more. With regard to the AI for test automation, other quality engineers activities, the survey shows that the adoption of AI augmented capabilities for test automation is low today, with only 40% of respondents reporting that they have used some kinds of AI capabilities for test automation. However, it is expected that AI will provide a significant impact on test automation in the near future.
Before we jump on the next section, Dr. Vu, if you don't mind, I think I would like to express my opinion. And I think AI, when we say near future, it is almost like saying right now is making a huge impact. And I would be curious to see. I know we're going to dive deeper into these insights later in the fireside chat, but I would be curious to see what the findings are. And I would be willing to say, if we were to run these in maybe less than 6 months from now, we would see an immediate change on all the responses that we would get based on all the activity that we're seeing with all the ML models that are being available publicly now. So thank you for those insights, Dr. Vu. So as we move on now to the fireside chat session of the webinar, so what we're going to do now is Dr. Vu is going to give us an overview, a deep dive overview of each one of the insights that we just shared. And then our friends from Cigniti and Deloitte are going to also share their insights and share their opinions on each one of these statistics. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move into the topic of quality assurance practices. What findings can you share with us from there, Dr. Vu?
Yeah, the chart on the left-hand side displays all the techniques we surveyed, revealing that the 2/3 of the respondents employed automation for unit testing and integration testing, system testing. It is common for teams to use multiple techniques in combination, like they can use unit testing with code review. These QA techniques are also the most effective. We can see in the chart on the right. Just next, please. Yeah, as previously mentioned, the majority of people are satisfied with the quality upon of the software quality upon delivery, with 40% of respondents rating as a very good or and 33% rating as good. However, the same cannot be said for their level of satisfaction with the QA practices and tools, as the majority of them express the lower levels of satisfaction in this area. And so we can see is that we can do more on improving the QA practices and tools for the community. Yet despite being highly satisfied with the software quality, the QA community faces significant challenges in achieving their quality goals. To most common cited challenges are the lack of time to ensure quality and difficulties in adopting automation. For adopting automation, the top two challenges are identified are the frequent requirement changes and the lack of skills and experience. The next, I think, Rajesh, from Cigniti's perspective, so you can share your insights and recommendations on to address these challenges.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Wu. Thanks for having me on this from the Katalon front. And from a Cigniti standpoint, I think it's a bit of reading between the lines of all the data that had been collated and what we see as the quality engineering practitioner on the ground when we work across some of the industries and clients. So it's really fun to look at the data and between the lines what really is happening in the industry in terms of the various techniques and practices that are being employed. So some of them, some of the data that is out there in terms of how this has come through looks a little bit contrary to how it had started in terms of the way the techniques have been rated, automation being one of the key, and then code review. So this, and again, unit testing as well. So, and the other side, you see challenges in terms of satisfaction of a specific practice and so on. So what we have seen in our world is you definitely have a lot of practices that each team brings, and these are probably the best practices that we just coined them. But context drives them to make them really good practice for that specific client or a specific problem statement. And when you find the right mix of the tactic and the technique and you scale it up, it becomes a great practice, because that way you will be able to really align with your testing objectives and goals. And that's when you would really start seeing really the benefits of using a specific practice. So while the QA teams sort of go through the transformation, they are ready to experiment, adopting new techniques. And with Agile and DevOps, I think test automation has become the center of all the techniques in terms of how you would adopt, not limiting them to test execution, but moving beyond the test execution per se. What we also see is the key thing that we observe, I think the others would touch upon in terms of shift left and all other practices that are in play. We see that the way software is being developed and created, they need to become much more testable and observable. And that's when your leverage from a test automation standpoint would really go a notch above than what we are today. So we see that while you have a lot of best practices, the context is the king in terms of how you would do it. Make it a good practice, and then you apply some of the techniques that are there, align to your tactics. Thereby, you will get a better ROI from test automation. We also see there are a lot of influences of Agile and DevOps, and there are multi-personas in the team. So we also believe that one of the ways to actually reduce the challenges in test automation and the skill specifically, adopting natural language to test design and trying to see how you would embed more testing folks to do a lot more automation than they do today. And I also observed from the challenges and the way teams struggle today. Um, Again, I'm going back to my statement in terms of there is a best practice and technique, but the service providers side of the world, we see that there is a lot of gaps in terms of how you apply specific tools or frameworks into this context. And there's a great opportunity out there from a service provider standpoint to understand the nuances of how this platform was built and being able to apply to this specific technique. So there's a lot happening in the test automation world, and my belief is if you get your tactics right in terms of the long-term planning strategy and objectives, take a specific practice, trying to see how you can marry to your context, that will get you right into the mix of getting a better leverage. And with, like I said, the other parts of the puzzle is while while the application architectures are moving away um, from the traditional IT systems to hosted and cloud-based and SaaSified, your test automation can't be just limited to a specific function-based testing. It needs to go above and beyond in terms of non-functional, in terms of the various touch points that you would have. So your test platforms need to be much more flexible, integrated to the larger pieces of the puzzle in terms of the overall application architecture. So, and that I see that there are few sort of measurements that have been taken via this specific where there is data around API testing and services testing and so on. So that's a good sort of metric to track. And finally, we also feel that the more model based that you get, you and there is no context to what you are trying to do. Typically, we see those set of issues of applicability of that specific model or best practice getting stuck. So we should be really watchful of how you would apply this specific tactic and technique. So that's broadly, I would say, how you would navigate the puzzle of the various best practices that are there and how you would translate that back to your context and try to leverage it. Over to you, Vishy.
Thank you, Rajesh. What we would like to add, our friends from Deloitte, to these insights?
For sure, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from the world. Thanks for having us. This is the first time that we co-sponsor the State of Quality report with Katalon. Across our network, we've seen Katalon building up the almost an emerging capability in the market across couple funds. So honored to be here, our first time sponsor, and looking forward to more conversation a few years down the road. So building on Rajesh's point, I think in terms of the QA practice and technique, we echo a lot of the findings that they collected and compiled into the report. But when we think of the QA practice and technique, one of the things that we are looking at is this is, I think it's an understatement to say this is a very exciting times, right, in the market. In addition to the pandemic, right, we've seen a lot of events, right, for the past few years that really accelerated, but also shape, right, how software is being delivered and how software is being tested, right? And we are seeing our clients, other organizations, they continue to pivot, right? Like we're seeing more and more the future of work concept, right? The hybrid model, the new normal. So what that means to the organization is they are trying to reimagine, right? What the test strategy should look like, right? A, to deliver the works, right? To deliver quality in a different way, but also, to promote some of the workplace efficiency, workplace equality agenda, and continue to lead, right, in the market. Now, when we're looking at the testing practice and the testing techniques, right? Interesting to see all the survey results. However, like the actual fundamental techniques, right? We haven't seen a lot of changes. But what we are seeing is when we look into the future, with the introduction of new technology, right? With the introduction of like metaverse, right? Virtual reality, so on and so forth, we are seeing down the road, right? In terms of how we deliver quality, right? We're seeing a lot of progress, right? So, I talk about the sort of new driving force when it comes to new technology, right? But for internal, right? For quality engineering as a growth enabler, right? As a growth accelerator, right? Like I said, a lot of the clients are reimagining the test strategy, right? And more importantly, how they enhance the test environment, data management, test automation technique, so on and so forth. So when we look at all the trend, one of the things in addition that we are seeing is the clients is a lot more receptive, right, to adopting a risk-based testing technique, right? When you think of introducing new technology, new system, right, and a lot of the business transformation client that we work with, there is the side of technology that is new, right, that are very receptive to adopt to new delivery model, agile, DevOps, new technique. But there's other side, right, of the organization. They are more on the legacy side, right, the legacy technology. Mainframe is not going to go away anytime soon, right? So there is still the monolithic type of system, right, that is happening. So what that means is the testing cycle is becoming increasingly higher proportion relative to overall delivery, right? Like some of the clients that we've seen, the regression testing cycle could be close to 50%. So what that means is the client is a lot more receptive, right, to adopting a risk-based testing approach, right, to make sure that, we deliver the quality. However, right, to reduce, right, and minimize the bottleneck, right, when it comes to testing delivery, right, as part of the delivery cycle. And I think Rajesh mentioned Shift Lab, right? That's a trend that we are also seeing in addition to what's in the report. Now, Shift Lab is an interesting concept, right? Everybody's thinking about Shift Lab, but how do we have a testable feature set? How do we enable a early release candidate so that the testing is a continuous delivery train, right, to leading up to the production? This is the piece of the Shift Lab, right, that we are seeing a lot more valuable, right, to the client to de-risk and also to improve the speed of delivery. Now, this is where the voice of testing is important. When you think of big transformation program, multiple delivery port, multiple sprint, inside the wall, outside the wall, across the world. Like we see the testing team is most of the cases, the latch pin that tie everything together. So the voice of testing, right, to influence the delivery roadmap, to minimize the flowing over the wall, that is important. So what that means is when you think of the talent, the caliber, right, of the testing team, what we're seeing more is the testing team will be forced to step out of the traditional four walls of testing, right? They need to be multi-tenant, right? They need to be industry focused. They need to build the credibility with the business, with the various technology stakeholders. That is the way that we enable Shift Lab testing. That's the way that we can be more helping the client more receptive, right, to risk-based testing approach to make it more agile. So the other trend I want to touch on is the agile and the DevOps delivery model. So I agree with all the technique that the report mentioned and we just mentioned earlier. We're seeing more in-sprint delivery model. We are seeing more, we call the test ops, right? Essentially is doing more testing into the production and influence the production inside A/B testing, right? And also like the internal pilot. Those are some additional technique, more on the business side. Again, stepping away from the traditional four wall of testing to adopt into the agile DevOps model. Now, if you're looking at the industry, right? I think by now, if you look at the industry survey, 80%, right, of the organization is coming in at adopting the agile and the DevOps delivery model. Sort of the devils in the details is they're always part of the organization, right? Maybe most that is more traditional waterfall model that build for stability. There's still challenges, right, related to adopting the agile DevOps technique, and a lot of the time is around the organization culture, right? So in terms of the adoption, in terms of the change management, in addition to the technique, right, that was mentioned, we also think that the changing, the training, the adopting, the having client adopting the agile DevOps model, that's another key element looking forward, right, to make the QA practice more more robust, right, more scalable and more future-proof. So that's my quick spiel in terms of the practice and techniques in quality assurance.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you, Jason. That was great. Thank you for sharing that. So now moving on to the test automation topic. Dr. Wu, I think we have some pretty cool insights about what are the trends that we're seeing that people or testers are working on lately. Do you mind giving us the debrief here? We have you on mute, Dr. Wu. My apologies.
Sorry. Sure. So there's a question on the chat about what is test automation actually. So basically, the test automation is applied to computers to automate the activities that are normally done by the human beings. So Katalon has a model for that. So at the end, towards the end of the presentation, the talk today, I'm sharing the models introduced by the Katalon. But the most of respondents adopted automation for testing on the web applications and API services. But we see the increase in adopting automation for the mobile app testing. And yeah, of course, in the automation, regression testing is where the automation the most suitable. But with advances in AI, and we see that more testing types and activities are automated, like generating test cases and data automatically, right? And performing other actions normally done by the human beings. Yeah, and again, the chart shows that the majority of the respondents report a positive returns on investment for test automation. Yeah, this is quite consistent with what we reported last year. Around 20% of ROI on average. But going deeper, this year, we can see that when the people apply a longer automation, the higher return on investment is achieved. And as you can see here, as 20% of respondents having seen an ROI of 50% or higher if they apply automation for 5 or more years.
I think this is the insight that you were referring to, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. All right. With that brief, now let's go ahead and jump onto let's continue chatting about test automation. Sairam, what is your view on this topic?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Katalon, for putting this insightful report. Delighted to be part of this conversation representing Cigniti. As my colleague Rajesh, Dr. Wu, and Jason spoke about, the need for test automation continues to increasingly, reach newer heights. And it's just not about functional testing at the UI level, right? So today, the confluence of a myriad of digital applications essentially leads to the fact that the entire test automation should be treated as a cohesive software development effort. And before we get into trends, right? So let's look at, fundamentally what could be the new age goals itself for software test automation? It's the ability of test automation derives to a fact that it could actually reduce the whole risk of the project. Essentially, it can increase the confidence in the release candidate, as we all know, because that helps us getting it faster. That means it is releasing it faster, uh, freeing up the tester's time in the sense, scriptless, codeless, headless, various methods of test automation that as practitioners you all know, which also means that the original tester's human intellect and human mind could be better used in terms of finding defects that are otherwise not possible to be found, and essentially making sure that delivering the working software frequently, as we all alluded in the world of agile, the swiftness with which releases happen are unbelievably faster. So while that as the prelude to goals of software test automation, there are essentially four essential steps to implement test automation itself. While it is important to develop a clear set of goals and having dedicated and skilled resources, it's also about choosing the right tools. While we get into trends, I want to make this profound statement that I read in a Gartner report. By 2027, 50% of enterprises will have implemented an AI augmented dev and testing strategy, with a significant increase from 10% in 2022. If you actually go back to beginning of our conversation, and I'm so glad Katalon found very similar trend. And you said that if we do the same report 6 months from now, this whole notion of AI in software test automation would have jumped, doubled, or tripled. So that's exactly what we are seeing more from practitioners and what Rajesh and team are driving as value innovation to our customers, and certain emerging trends, right? So AI driven testing will be enterprise ready. It's not going to be confined to labs, or it's not going to be confined to ML practitioners or some of those only geeks. Now it's enterprise ready. We all know what a co-pilot and a chat GPT could do, which means that any function inside the organization today is one step away from leveraging the power of AI. And that's good news for software testing. Well, there are already, in fact, in Cigniti Labs, we are working on this digital twin models for testing. We are doing testing bots, testing assistants, and in this is a whole new thing that's going to take off. I don't want to repeat the importance of shift left, because I think Rajesh and Jason and everyone alluded to it. But what we are also seeing is Web3, and Web3 is not blockchain, right? We all know that stuff. The newer frontiers of digital mobile testing, when applications are at the cusp of being augmented, extended reality, this whole confluence of Web 3.0 technologies will be where the new digital mobile apps, or voice as the new interface we call, these are going to come in. So these are some trends that we are seeing. Hyper intelligent automation, we've already looked at that in our organization. It's beyond RPA or beyond the conventional test automation. It is hyper intelligent automation leveraging a confluence of AI technologies. I think that's what is more and more will make a given industry more intelligent, because the automation by in itself is extremely smart, and not just that is instructed or a regression script anymore, which also means that the age of customer that we are living in, frictionless digital customer experiences are something that is taken for granted, which means that digital experience testing, and that is one place where I believe human mind will lead into automation, not the other way around, because experience is something that human mind, human intellect is much more adept at feeling, at emoting, and at delivering. And obviously the back-end automation to get there is hypercritical. Lastly, that is something that Cigniti believes, our platforms believe, that a lot of analytics, insights, which are either predictive, descriptive, and that could get in as much real time as they could. I think that's where this whole thing gets in, where data is God, as they say. And in the world of us, in the world of testing, test automation, and quality engineering, having an ability to take a last minute call with real time insights through a lot of data, it could come in from backend, it could come in from data sources, it could come in through emotions, it could come in through sentiments, it could come in through structured, unstructured data sets. I think when they all converging together, and that's the reason why I would go back to the fact that AI driven testing would be enterprise ready, and we should all treat it like a full-time software development effort. And in my opinion, the complex the digital landscape becomes, the more important automation. So that's something that I just wanted to share. Over to you, team. Hopefully this is of some use.
Absolutely. And now we're moving on to Vichy. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Katalon, for having us here. I'm very excited to represent Deloitte. A lot of very good insights on Sairam. What I'd like to really share at my time is some practical experiences that I've seen with the client, which I'm sure will resonate with a lot of the people that are in the group. So one of the things I learned from the report is that the clients are saying quality is not a big concern. Great. Quality is not a big concern. Why? Because clients find a way to do adequate testing to reach the quality they're looking for. But at what cost? At the cost of extended deadlines, at the cost of higher cost of quality, all of that put together, you meet the quality, but your deadlines are longer and your overall cost is increasing, which is not acceptable. So we need to find a way to have practices and tools such that you meet the good quality you need, but at the right speed and at optimal cost. That's the key part of it. So we obviously talked about shift left, which is an important part of meeting cost because you want to avoid rework. Adequate test coverage and traceability is extremely important because if you don't have the right test coverage, the testing you're doing initially is not adequate, and you have to do tons of rework later, which again causes delay. But there are a couple of other items which is pretty near and dear to my heart I want to share. One of the things is that how do you bring speed? You bring speed through test automation. Test automation is really the one that people use to bring the good return on investment, good ROIs. However, organizations make the traditional mistake of going and automating their entire test spread. So if I've seen with organizations that have like 10,000 or 20,000 test cases, but accumulated over the years, a lot of redundancies, a lot of duplicates. And if you go and automate them, not only are you spending so much time for one-time automation, you're spending so much time and effort in maintaining it. So one of the key aspects that we promote here is optimize your test bed. Find a way to remove all the redundancy, shrink the 10,000 to likely like 1,500 or whatever, and then go and automate. That way, not only you're spending less time initially, but ongoing maintenance is so much smoother. So optimization can be achieved by a lot of means. There are some tools in the market, which kind of up and coming tools, but also AI plays a very important role in optimization as well. You can use NLP machine language to go through your test cases, understand the behavior, how it is, identify redundancies, and then try to remove all the duplication. That's one of the things that we're actually promoting within Deloitte and trying to build an asset within ourselves to use it. So that test optimization will improve your automation, bring in better speed and higher quality and optimal cost. Second part is ongoing maintenance. Ongoing maintenance, obviously, with the large test bed automation, it's going to take a lot of effort to maintain it because applications change constantly. And even if you optimize it, there's no guarantee that when application changes, you know exactly where you want to go automate. So the concepts and features like self-healing become extremely important. So you want to have an automation framework that helps you build automation upfront. But at the same time, an application changes over time. The tool and the framework needs to have the ability to come and tell you exactly what has changed. So where the automation needs to be fixed. If you don't have that ability, you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours trying to figure out where to fix it. And I've seen clients who completely abandoned automation because they just didn't know how to maintain it. So maintenance of automation is extremely critical. And then the other aspects, couple of other aspects I would like to bring in is people tend to think of automation as only automating regression testing, which is not true. You got to bring in automation within Sprint, whether that's functional UI-based automation or API automation, or even an automation with performance testing within the sprint cycle. When you do that, you're not only building automation upfront and creating a test bed that can be reused for regression as and when you go through each and every sprint, you're also enabling a true continuous testing with CI/CD. With continuous integration, continuous development, you're bringing in continuous testing, which not only improves your speed, but it makes the whole thing so smooth and cyclical. That is the key for bringing automation within a sprint. Another big challenge most organizations have is test data management. We all know test data is so crucial and we always struggle with test data. One of the concepts that we would need to look into, which is still not mature, it's a pretty initial dormant cycle, is bringing provisioning test automation, test data into your continuous integration lifecycle. Find a way to have test data such that it's automatically fed in when you have like automation built through CI/CD. So when you run automation during a sprint, or when you run automation during regression in your sprint plus one, find a way to automatically feed in the data. When you do that, you've got true continuous testing, true CI/CD from start to finish. Those are my insights from what I've seen and what I've experienced. Thank you,
Excellent.
Lucia.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rishi. This has been very insightful. So now let's go ahead and move into a topic that I personally find very fascinating. And I'm very curious to see what are the findings in the report. Dr. Wu, let's go ahead and chat about AI for test automation and what are the trends that we're seeing in this report today.
Yeah, sure. So AI has become an exciting trend in recent years. And of course, I'm sure you have heard of ChatGPT and large language models, right? It's recently, last year and early this year. And our survey actually reveals that the transformation is a primary focus of the respondents in 2023. So that is the key thing aligned with the AI for automation. However, we have also seen that behavior-driven development is a significant area of focus, as it encourages a collaboration among developers, QA engineers, and customers, highlighting the importance of effective collaboration in achieving high-quality software products. That is a key item in the agenda for the our participants in the survey this year. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, AI has the potential to change the way we perform quality engineering activities, such as we can apply AI for test generation, test optimization, defect detection, and fixing. And of course, you have heard ChatGPT and LLMs that they can be applied for generating test cases from requirements. You can see them apply for generating test scripts from the code. Even the code, they can generate the test scripts for us to test the applications. And many other potential use cases that we can see the application of ChatGPT and large language models in the very near future.
Excellent. And then we also have one more insight here.
Yes. So we have seen the trends. So Katalon has provided the model, something called the autonomous testing model. We released the model recently for evaluating the levels of automation, autonomous in organization, and for the platforms of tools. The model consists of 6 levels, ranging from all manual testing, which is level 0, to autonomous testing, level 5. So in the top level, you can see here that all computers are done the jobs for the human being. So we don't have to worry about running the activities of testing, test execution, and so on. But reaching the level 5, which is might not be realized in the future, but that is the way we move forward to. So at the low level, humans perform testing actions and decisions. But at a high level, computers take over. So computers are making decisions and performing actions. Most of the testing automation tools today are at a very low level, level 1 or 2. And we will see more tools providing more integrated and intelligent automated testing, which is at the high level, level 3 and 4. In the near future with the help of the AI. So that's a very exciting trend we see in moving forward to higher level of autonomous testing. Yes, so
Thank you. I read something very interesting not too long ago that said you don't have to worry about AI taking your job, but about someone who knows AI about taking your job. And I think I couldn't agree more. There is a lot of cool tools out there. Definitely you need to know how to ask the right questions for it to help you. And but I'm curious to see what Saram has to say about this whole AI on software testing insights.
Yeah, sure. Before I do that, I think the 5 level model that Dr. Wu spoke about quite insightful. It's a parallel to what we see in autonomous driving as well. The near 100% autonomous driving ADAS 5 is something near impossible to achieve. We all wish, but before whether cars get there or not, looks like testing might get there. So that's quite interesting. In fact, in our own Insta tool inside our platform, we have this whole NLP driven test asset modeling and creation that Rajesh and team have been working, which is the cornerstone of our whole thought process on how AI infused. Broadly speaking, if you look at, there are AI infused applications and AI led test automation approaches. But fundamentally, our belief is that AI in software testing, or more so from test automation, impacts and has resonance on all the 5 areas, right? So in fact, the Katalon research very much showed that the top 3 percentile research factoids confirm that test planning, test prioritization, which is the most important thing, where AI already started impacting. So I heard about automated requirements or requirement driven testing, the intelligence in the test selection, and of course, we have standard old mathematical techniques that can do test set optimization. And today, I think AI can do that. When you have a pair programming model, a co-pilot, an assistant in the form of a chat GPT, or more importantly, generative AI, I think all of this is much more faster. But what is also important is in a scenario-driven API testing, I think there is a significant amount of AI-led innovation. The second aspect is how important, as we all know, is the aspect of test creation and maintenance, which is the heart of automated testing, as we all acknowledge. So that is where I think our research, our own experience says that the greatest amount of innovation and fiercest competition amongst tool vendors would come in. And I'm glad Katalon is actually leading this whole race as much as it could, which means that tomorrow's features are already ones that we are seeing: AI augmented design, AI assisted unit test creation, some of the whole aspect of converting manual test cases through AI, and self-healing test. And that is something that in our Insta, Rajesh has been very promulgatively building. And we are seeing a lot of AI in performance engineering, optimization, and so on and so forth, right? So that's element number 2. In test data generation, this whole concept of synthetic data, as we all know, the class of data that is artificially generated, I think puts the whole model of test data to an inverse proportion. And I also heard Rishi talking about test data management becoming an integral part of continuous delivery, if I heard it right. And I think that in my opinion, when AI gets to there, it helps us speeden up the whole process. Visual testing, right? It's where a lot of GUI testing. When imagine today, as they say, no UI is the new UI, voice is the new interface. When we have scenarios like that, and visual testing uses this whole visible output of an application so that it can actually compare the original construct of the design with visual testing. So no specific assertions have to be written because it mimics what a human tester would see when things don't look right. That's the element I was earlier also alluding. AI at the end of the day still will be augmentative, will be assistive, but it will never be replacing the human intellect. The more the complex it becomes, I think human intellect would still find a place. And foremost, in the area of defect analysis, test reporting, AI is having a significant impact in terms of automatic defect classification and prediction, which again, I think I saw in the Katalon survey chart. So essentially what I'm alluding is to maximize the benefits of AI augmented testing. The whole software engineering leadership should evaluate all of these 5 areas, and it's important for us as quality engineering professionals to sort of implement this and sort of have a mindset that it's about being assistive. Taking advantage of advancements in computation, machine learning, and AI is going to help us significantly, and that's what we are seeing. These are some aspects that I thought I'll share on behalf of Cigniti.
Great, thank you so much. Now we pass the mic to Jason.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me again. I agree with the survey, agree with the insight that Saram has shared. I am also glad to see that when it comes to AI for software testing, like Katalon has made quite a bit of improvement for the past year, 12 to 18 months. And where I'm coming from is, I think as QE professionals, we've seen a lot of promise, right, and the potential in AI. I agree with what Dr. Bill said earlier, right? This is just a matter of, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how much and how fast, right? AI is going to change the QE market. However, right, the sort of the tooling, the aspect, right, the AI for when it comes to AI for software testing is still fragmented at this point, right? And we can see more convergence, right, and consolidation of the platform to make it a true integrated manner. We also agree that in the short term, now short term is all relative, right? The AI will play a role in augmenting, right, the quality engineer, right? And to Dr. Liu's point earlier, I think the sort of true autonomous, right, the true aspect, that's the nirvana, right, that we're gonna see, right? And but I think in the short term, it's more about augmenting the quality engineer, right, to assist in what they're doing in the job. And part of the reason is, and this is what I'm talking about, sort of the key enablement need, right? Coming from some real life example. Totally agree the NLP processing, right, is to sort of harvest the information into requirement, right, to improve the test design, right, to drive the coverage in a more robust way, right? And I think that's where NLP is going to play a huge role, right, in optimizing that. However, that also predicated on, I call it the uniformity of the requirement, right? It would be, ideal, right, that all the requirement, all the delivery is driven from, BDD and TDD model. In reality, and we should talk about the regression test bed earlier, right? Most of the requirement, right, is coming not in a uniform way, right? So, in order to getting into, I think NLP is a great assistance, right, to build the automation suite through AI into the next level. But the credibility with the business, right? The fact that we are able to influence the testing priority, I think that would be the key, which lead to, I call the prioritizing of the regression suite. Like one of the pieces that we keep on helping clients to solve the problem is how do you reduce the overall delivery cycle through reduction of, as I mentioned, increasingly high proportion related to testing, right? So, there are open source library, right, to prioritize the regression suite, but building the business insight, right, able to influence the regression selection, that part is going to be the key. Now, defect analysis and trend, like totally makes sense. And, when it comes to production monitoring, right? How do we take the production data, right? Be it through the log, through the event, right? To improve the coverage on performance, on resiliency, on chaos engineering, right? All those pieces important. However, right? As like any AI model, right? We need the sufficient defect, production insight and trend to educate the model. So, one of the clients that I worked with before, right? It was a very good, solid, robust structure when it comes to, how do we use the production insight, right, to improve the model. What it comes to is in the initial phase of the rollout, we still need to rely on data. On human discussion, human intervention, because the data is not available just yet, right? But what we see the potential is that more and more production incident, as more and more production monitoring and event, right, that come into the place, right, that will make the model, right, more autonomous, more credible, and honestly, more fair, right, to the quality engineering community. Now, last but not least is the data orchestration and virtualization. I agree with all those, right? The referential integrity of the data, especially in a legacy world, which is more product-centric rather than customer-centric, and also the multi-channel, the multifaceted device, so on and so forth. So a lot of work to be done, right, on orchestration and how do we reduce the footprint, right? When it comes to test data, right? The virtualization aspect, right? The different time aspect of the test data, all those are important to make the AI for software testing successful. So in short, seeing a lot of promise, right? A lot of progress and coming in very quickly, right? And I think this is a trend that we'll continue to see involved. And I would say that in terms of what's the trend, 12, 24 months down the road, that is something that we need to put a close eye on, right? There may not be a silver bullet answer. We didn't know about ChatGPT, was there 12 to 18 months ago. So this is an area that's super exciting. We are all trying to craft the potential, right, of this interesting subject area.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's one of my favorite topics, and we have seen the evolution of these models in the last quarter has been incredible. So I cannot even imagine where all this is going to be 2 years down the road. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the conversation about the challenges and opportunities in quality assurance. Saram and Rajesh, I see that we have some opportunities and some challenges that we have identified here. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, I think this is a slide I would, it's pretty self-explanatory as we all understand. The amount of challenges that still we all see as practitioners and professionals, both on the technical front and as well as from the human capital front, right? There still are situations where the last minute changes to requirements, no matter how shrinking the development cycle is, how, defined the sprint requirements are, that still puts a straw in the whole thing. Obviously, the more agile models get prevalent, the scrum masters have to still ensure that the level of entropic information on user stories have to be minimized, so that the focus to ensure that the functional aspect of a user story is completely validated. Needless to say, the heterogeneity of the IT environments always causes a stir at the last moment, unstable environments, how much ever we have access to, spanning something on a cloud, how much ever it is virtualized, or how much ever it is affordable, the whole entropic environments can actually, tilt the whole aspect. Finally, I think it's also about the consistent amount of collaboration that we need between testers and developers. While we have a tribe of dev testers these days, SDETs these days, folks who write the code to test, vice versa. Still, there is a little bit of blur in terms of the understanding that quality engineering, digital assurance, continuous testing is there to actually accelerate the quality of the overall software, and it should not be viewed as some elite discipline. And that's where a lot of developer mindset still needs to be changed. Foremostly, obviously, as they say, nothing is fully foolproof. There are still tests that could fail under real user conditions, which is something that none of us can control. The best we could go is to go closer. While that said, that the glass is always half full in our view. The number of opportunities that we see, right? As we all know, a conservative estimate says the whole digital assurance is a $60 billion market. That throws, and a research that I read said that it's the software test tool market is growing at about 9.8% CAGR post the recessionary headwinds. And that should be a great news for a market leader like Katalon, right? And as testing professionals, as quality engineers, I think there's significant amount of opportunities, particularly I'm looking at API and services test automation as myriad applications, get to interact with each other. As architecture gets microservices led, the more containerized that it can become, I think there is significant amount of opportunity on the speed and resilience with which automation could deliver. We spoke at length about AI in testing, and hence I'm not repeating that. The last point is something that I want to, the integration of tools and activities, right? So as we all know, hundreds of tools get in, open source plugins, commercial tools, home developed, and we have standard tools that we are all talking about. So that's actually a great opportunity in terms of usage of tools. But what also happens is, as they say today, the entire SaaS consumption, SaaS buyer preference that is happening in enterprise have brought in a new set of tools and their integrations, which means that when you look at it from a functional readiness of a SaaS application to go live, there is a significant amount of opportunity for all of them to work together. And that is where I think a great opportunity lies for an integrated digital assurance approach. And when you look at it, a connected enterprise becoming reality with sensors, devices, data getting on and off in the enterprise perimeter, it just throws innumerable amount of opportunity. So I would look at it as an extremely optimistic situation where the number of opportunities supersede the number of challenges and can only get better. That's what we think. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And then let's move on to Jason. You also have some insights on this topic. Would you like to share?
Vichy is going to cover that for us,
Vichy is
Lucio.
going to cover.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. I got the speakers wrong here. Go ahead.
That's okay. Happy to be back, guys. So like before, I wanted to share some practical insights on what I've seen with clients and in the market. I want to elevate this discussion to a more organizational layer and also talk about perception and client. There's actually a question from Madhava Prasad addressed to Jason, but if you don't mind, I'll answer it. Do you find organizations still view QA as a separate function? The short answer is no. And I know Sairam also talked about collaboration between QA and dev teams as well. The short, simple answer is quality is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of the testing team or the QA team. Everyone needs to do, because quality is not just about testing. Quality starts with basically how you write user stories, how you convert that into test cases, which I'll touch in a couple of minutes, and then how you do a pervasive automation across the life cycle, and how you do regression testing. How do you ensure quality? Quality is everyone's responsibility, and it's got to be embedded throughout the life cycle. That's the short answer. Now, one of the challenges we see within organizations, or many of them are very federated. So you basically have an organization with multiple lines of business. One line of business is doing their own type of QA, another one is doing their own. One is running, Katalon, another one is running a different automation tool. So there are no standardization and tools. There are no standardization and practices and methods. There's definitely no overarching QA governance, because of which it's not only impacting quality, it's impacting speed, it's impacting cost. I'm not saying that testing as such should be all completely centralized, which is impractical. We call it the hub and spoke model. We have to arrive based on the culture and the organization style, what fits for each client, what can be centralized, and what needs to be belonging to each and every streams or lines of business or projects that are going on. So that is a very interesting concept, because there are certain types of testing which you can go across different work streams. You centralize them. Governance, definitely you need to centralize. You need to find a commonality of tools, practices, and methods. That definitely has to be centralized. So this good mix of a hub and spoke model that fits a client has to be established upfront. We call it the operating model. Once you do that, then you can operate in a semi-hybrid centralized fashion, which means that you're getting rid of silos. Definitely, you're not operating in one work stream one way, another work stream another way. The silos are completely gone. Silos are becoming slowly obsolete, and they need to become obsolete. So you're bringing centralization, standardization, and governance all up front, and you're putting it in things like functional testing, for instance, which needs to happen for each specific lines of business, go into the streams. So that operating model is extremely critical. Organizations are very challenged with having the right fit, which is creates a great opportunity for companies like us to go in and tell them exactly how they should be doing their quality. Second part I want to talk about is the perception and the culture. I've actually had people ask me, like, what do you have to write test cases? Why can't we just go do testing? So there's a lack of awareness that test design is extremely critical. If you don't do proper test design, if you don't do right adequate test case, how are you going to know what you're testing? How are you going to know if you're testing sufficiently, which not only brings rework, more dangerously, it actually puts a lot of defects into production, which increases your defect leakage and it causes a lot more issues later on with the users. So test design with adequate coverage and traceability is extremely important. It's not only important to do it, it's also important for us to increase the awareness among people, among the clients, among the market, that this is important. So the third part I want to talk about is the concept of the pandemic. Pandemic brought in an interesting shift in paradigm. Basically, a lot of people started working remotely. So we thought that was actually a challenge, but this disruption actually caused a lot of innovation and improvement in efficiency. The funny thing is that one of the QA executives said remote working has brought in continuity and empowered teams to work toward innovation. What this really means is that because everybody's working remotely and then there was no handoff from one to the other, the continuity became a lot smoother when people started working remotely. Now, slowly, we're moving into a hybrid model and we have to continue with the continuity. The remote working also empowered people to go not wait for someone, but to create innovations on their own. So over the last few years, because of the shifts of pandemic, not only has innovation improved, because of empowerment, a lot of efficiency and continuity also improved. That's one trend we're seeing in the marketplace. It's not actually a challenge, it's an improvement, I would say. It's an opportunity. The last but not the least, I'm going to harp on this one more time, AI, ML. I know Sairam mentioned about AI, Jason mentioned about AI. One of the challenges that all organizations face is test data. So we have to find a way to bring in synthetic test data during our testing. So real test data comes later when we get into integration and close to production. But as you test it, if you don't have good synthetic data, you're not going to be able to test adequately. So use AI to bring in a synthetic data capability. That's something we all need to invest our time and effort into. Thank you, Lucio.
Thank you so much, Rishi. That has been very insightful. I appreciate the information. So now let's go ahead and move into the case study section of the webinar. I know Deloitte and Cigniti, both of you have some stories that you would like to share in terms of how these trends, they're great. We found them by asking people the multiple questions, but curious to see how these trends that we found during while working on this report translate into real life case studies. So I'm going to pass the mic to Deloitte so we can walk through this interesting case study.
Sounds good. Always excited to talk about case study. When we serve client, we feel that every single client that we work with, right, there's some interesting elements that are coming out of this. And the reason why we selected this case study, it echo a lot of the trend from the survey. But this is also, we're seeing client doing more is what I call legacy transformation, right? So the problem statement here is the client is a major, let's say, transportation company, right, here in Canada. So the nature is they need to have a lot of tracking of where the package moved from receiving point A to point B, right? Delivered to the end customer, right? And, it sounds simple, but there are a lot of, I call high volume, right? Simple, right? But high responsive transaction, right? That needs to be tracked across the life cycle of the package from point A to point B. Now, what the client is trying to do is the current system, which is, I mentioned, is a legacy platform. It's a monolithic system, is coming out of life in, actually about 2 years from now, right? So, the client is looking at a transformation journey to modernize this monolithic system, moving from a forward system into a more modern architecture, right? Microservice based, right? It's a distributed architecture for technologies out there, right? Building on Arca and Scala distributed architecture, right? So this is a quite a highly technical project. A lot of the testing is being done is white box surfing, right? And also the performance, right, of the system is paramount, as I mentioned, right? Like all the high volume, right, simple type of message, right? They need to be responded and handled in a quick manner. So the performance is a key. And also part of that is for this client, they have the peak season, right? Christmas is a holidays, a peak season for this client. So the performance is paramount. So when it comes to testing delivery, right? All sort of the test phases that we are doing, right? But it's mostly driven by by more white box, right? Event-based testing rather than the traditional UI testing. Now, because of the nature of the system, right? We have to validate for scalability, but also more importantly, the technology stack underneath it, right? It requires to use multiple tooling, multiple automation framework in order to properly validate A, right, at a white box level, but B, end to end, how the message is flowing. So that's why you see on the right hand side is almost a peripheral, right? It's an ecosystem of technology that we need to introduce. And the challenge for our team is to tie all this technology together. We use Katalon mostly for UI and also for API, but also there are some elements of API testing, right? We need to use like things like Postman, right? Things like Grafana, right? In order to harvest those production insights to influence our testing, right? Test data is another key piece that we need to have multiple virtualization of data because we need to support a parallel run of testing. I think last but not least is the continuous delivery. So as a result or in parallel to change this system to a more modernized architecture, the client is emerging when it comes to DevOps agile maturity. So when we think of this as a modernized architecture, right, the client is looking at this to modernize the delivery method, right? So we are introducing like 2 to 3 week continuous delivery, right, to put packet of the features right into production, right? Starting from like a very thin basic, simple structure, all the ways to build on top, increment, right, to develop the business readiness feature set. So, all of this is, as I mentioned, right, it is echoing with the trend, right, that we see, be it BDD, be it test automation, be it test data, but this is the lens of how do we harvest and modernize a legacy environment, right, into a modern architecture using a ecosystem of tool set and also helping them modernize the delivery life cycle. So, we are obviously pretty proud of this project. One of the reasons is we also get the industry recognition, right? To put a plug in there for my colleague in the North American Software Testing Award, right? So, there are multiple categories. I think a lot of us participate in that sort of industry recognition. So this one was recognized as a best use of technology, and the aspect is it's not the tool set. The tool set is important. It's not just only the tool set, but also how do we use the different tool set together, right, to modernize the delivery and also modernize a monolithic legacy architecture. So that's what we want to share is, how do we apply all those techniques, right, that we mentioned in the survey into a world that may not be traditionally seen as agile DevOps, right, the type of environment.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason. And we also have a case study by, let's see, sorry, there you go, by Cigniti. So do you want to talk about these leading biotechnology company scenario and how did it go?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I think very similar sort of a setup in terms of the traditional IT, the way they were trying to build quality into their delivery model. So it's almost like 20,000 person days in a year, sort of an effort for the testing work across multiple lines of business. They were moving from some of the applications that were being developed more hybrid waterfall to some of the applications that were in agile and DevOps mode. So there was many of these methods being practiced, and the traditional challenges that we took over from one of the vendors, lack of innovation, thinking about how do we do things better. So that's the broad context in how we were introduced into this. We've been there for the last 2 years, and one of the key challenges is there are varied methodologies being used, and tools, multiple of them. So we had challenges in terms of which tools are applicable for what sort of scenarios, and how do you actually introduce some of these techniques in terms of how automation can be applicable. So these sort of challenges, we started with looking at broad base of how we look at the processes, where should what should be the operating model in terms of how we need to interact with the development teams. A lot of friction between what eventually comes as an outcome results in a lot of defect leakage to production. So that's part and parcel of how we started in terms of our journey. Uh, so the central function, the governance function, took an approach to standardize the methods, standardize the operating model to actually de-risk some of the delivery, uh, establish quality gates, trying to implement metrics that really helps us understand what's the risks that are eventually hitting to production, have a quantified way of quality index. I saw one of the questions being asked in that sort of a tone and manner where they wanted to understand the risks and the quality index. This was a classic case in a point where we use some of our tooling to actually understand what risks are getting introduced, build on build, and how do we measure quality in an objective way. So that's the grounds up view of how we solved some of the method to madness in terms of getting things right, in terms of the interactions between the teams, as well as what we do for the client overall in terms of making sure that the entire process is set up. Once we are done with that, we went ahead and looked at various opportunities for test automation, and from traditional functional testing to looking at each of these, because there were varied teams, each had their own method to madness in terms of using either their own custom built frameworks to building something very niche in terms of acquiring a new tool for a specific sales force and so on. So we looked at the entire gamut of how we introduce test automation into into their portfolio, which tools make sense, what as Cigniti can we become the glue in terms of all of these tooling so that we can leverage our methods in terms of accelerating what we will do. And specifically on the opportunities, because this there were specific programs that were going into modernization in terms of their overall architecture. We leveraged multiple tools to do an assessment and then recommend them specific API testing as well. So that way we were able to really take a lot of testing early in the life cycle, build confidence in what they were delivering it, and introduce DevOps methods in terms of software delivery, ability to automate the testing both at the API level and the functional testing level, and then eventually release to production where the entire process getting automated in terms of even infrastructure and so on. So all the opportunities across API test automation, and then of course there was a lot of data that formed part of this overall movement to modernization, and we those opportunities were harnessed and we were able to apply. So cutting across, in a summary, finding the right tools, methods, and practices and techniques, and making sure that this interaction is frictionless in terms of the intake as well as what we would give as the QA organization in terms of helping them understand what the key risks were, a real time live dashboard to understand where there are opportunities for improvement, and eventually making sure that the defect leakage came down drastically in terms of the SLAs that we were tracking. So that's the broad brush of how we were able to implement shift left, automate early, collect a lot of data, use data mechanisms to actually articulate where we are and where are we going. So that's broadly how we managed to deliver.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This has been very insightful. I want to thank everyone who has been, everyone in the panel who has been sharing their insights. With that said, now in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and move into the Q&A session. We have about 9 minutes to go before we conclude the webinar. So we've had multiple sessions and multiple questions addressed in the Q&A panel. I want to thank everyone who has been helping with answers, everyone from the Katalon Cigniti and also Deloitte team who has been providing answers in there. Very insightful. Thank you so much. There are a couple of them that have been already addressed. However, before we jump into that, I want to direct the attention of the attendees to the chat, where I've been posting some links for some resources that we want to share with you as more case studies from Cigniti. You also can find the link for the State of Quality report if you haven't downloaded that yet. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. And also you can read more about the autonomous software testing model that Dr. Wu was talking about a few minutes ago. So go ahead and take a look at the links that I posted there in the chat window. You will find those and much more resources on the Katalon website. So I know some of these questions have been addressed already, but I thought we could spend a couple of minutes discussing them. And as Vichy mentioned earlier, is directed to Jason, but we all can chime in. So the question is, in your experience, do you find that organizations will still view QA as a separate function? And what would be some of the hurdles that we will face, that can be faced integrating QA into the overall process? And I would like to pair that also with another question that came in that reads, do we have a view on the value that we realize as an outcome of artificial intelligence augmented testing in the testing pipeline?
So maybe Lucio, since the question addressed to me, maybe I'll start first and then other to chip in. So I think Vichy summarized that really well, right? In terms of what is the testing function looks like, right? Like from our observation, I think a hybrid, right, a federated model that's usually at the most value, right, to the business and all the stakeholder that QE functions serve. And I will add one thing on top is when it comes to a COE function, be it architecture COE, QE COE, it is key to stay relevant, right, to the value delivery of the organization, right? I think we all work with different part of COE in our career life, right? Either sitting on the COE or sitting in value delivery capacity, right? Where we find COE a lot more impactful is they stay relevant, right? And that's why we think the federated model, right, is important, because when it comes to testing, in addition to all the technology advancement that we look at, staying close with the business, understand the business priority, able to build credibility with the business, that it best enabled, right, through a federated delivery model. So I think that's the thing that I would add on, right, when it comes to the operating model of a QE COE. Maybe I'll let my other fellow panelists to take the second part of your question, Lucio, which is the ROI for AI.
Yeah, so just to rephrase it again, it says, do we have a view on the value that we realize as an outcome of AI infused or augmented testing?
Yeah, I can contribute to this question, actually. So I think that based on our survey, the current level of AI augmented testing is very low. We haven't seen the tools with the capabilities for generating the test cases from NLP, right? And the tools for generating the test data for API testing. So there are limited functionalities with AI capabilities today. but the adoptions are very low level, and most people don't realize that our features of having like AI capabilities in it. But I think in the future, with large language models like ChatGPT and others, it can allow us to generate the test cases from requirements. So we can take requirements and generate test cases and test scripts right away. And this can reduce the time for us to generate the test cases. That's one thing that I can see. We can see in the coming months, even there are tools available for us to do so. So this can reduce the time from us to do the activities. But the human beings are still in the control, right? They have to make decisions on whether the test cases generated by the tools are usable or still working or not. So based on our model, we have seen that it's take a long way to go to high level of automation, but the human beings are making decisions most of the time. So they're having the tools to reduce the time for doing certain activities. So it can reduce the time for us to test. And so we can have, we can deliver the software of earlier and higher coverage. And the quality of software is better than when we reduce to the market. So with the API, AI augmented capabilities.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Wu. So in the interest of time, we have run out of it. I want to thank every one of you from Katalon, Cigniti, and Deloitte, and the rest of the Katalon team who is sitting in the background answering questions and helping us. Thank you so much. To each one of you, the attendees, I want to reiterate, this is going to be available on our channels. Please go ahead and visit our website for recording and more material on the report. We want to thank every one of you for your participation, for your time. And with that said, please, everyone, have a good morning, good evening, and good night, and be safe. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.